Welcome to Faith in 5, a weekly video devotional designed to discuss practical spiritual concepts in 5 minutes or less. I'm your host, Mark Vandellen. I was hanging out with my buddy Steve the other day, and he was sharing with me how he just was really struggling with being down on himself. He said, I just feel like at this point in my life I should have accomplished more than I have, and I should just be happier than I am. And he said, I actually had to take a break from social media because I started to see all these things that my friends had and were doing, and I actually started to build up some resentment. He said it was just the weirdest thing. Some of my best friends, I would see pictures of them with their kids, or I'd see pictures of them on vacation, and I would start to feel angry, and I wasn't happy for them. And he said, then the other thing that happened is I started in my life, in my regular daily life, I started looking for ways that I could try to one-up them. Started looking for things that I could post. And I started looking at and talking about things that I had no business talking about. The 10th and last commandment is thou shalt not covet. Right? Do not covet. It says do not covet your neighbor's house, your neighbor's wife, your neighbor's servants, your neighbor's donkey. Just don't spend time worrying about what other people have and wanting what they have. See, the 10th commandment is the last one, but it's also the only one that's kind of invisible. All the others have to do with behaviors of how we act. This one you don't really see. That's what my friend Steve was wrestling with. He said, people don't know what's going on inside of me, and yet what it started to do was create this invisible, this silent unrest, this discontent with who I am and what I have. And then I started wanting to go get other things to try to fill something that I didn't understand was even there. See, when we start to focus on all the things that our neighbors have, we get dissatisfied with what we do have. And so it starts to build inside of us, and we start to distance ourselves from God because we're unable to see the many blessings, the many things that we do have, the gifts, the skills, the abilities, and even the possessions that we do have, because we're spending so much time seeing the differences in our neighbors. See, Romans 12:2, it says, don't copy the behaviors of others, but instead do and follow, do what God wants, because then you'll spend more time with God, because then you'll start to see his desires for your life. See, we each have unique skills and abilities. We each have a different path to live, and if we don't live our stories, then the story is incomplete. If we want to live somebody else's story, it's not worth living because it's not yours. So here in this invisible commandment, the one that exists behind closed doors, God's after what's really going on inside of us, and he wants us to see the many things that he's given us. When we see everything that's going on around us and we see all the people and what they have, we miss out on the very things that are in front of us, and we miss out on what God's doing in our lives. So I would encourage you to assess where you're at. Just take a moment to reflect, to revel in the many things that you do have, the many gifts that are uniquely you, and what God's doing in your life. And then I want you to look around and celebrate. Celebrate what other people have. Celebrate with your friends, the wins, the promotions, the babies, all of those things, because that's their story. God's weaving all of our stories together, and we get to be co-authors in those stories. We should be so elated in that sense. And then lastly, bring your concerns, bring your struggles, bring the things that you feel inadequate about, bring your desires that you haven't quite accomplished, bring those to God and spend time in communication with him about them. Just be honest, open and honest about them. Because again, in Romans 12, it says, focus on what God wants, and his desires for you will become more clear. I want you to be able to live out, and I think God wants you to be able to live out. what his desires are for you, because you're sitting in your story and you're living your story out. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to follow us each week, click here to subscribe. And if you want to take it a little bit further, click here for discussion materials.